Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a review for you of this little guy, the Kizer Splinter. Now, for whatever reason, cognitively, I'm having trouble saying Kizer Splinter. I'm probably going to say Kizer Shard at some point in time. That is not true. That is not the case. This is the Kizer Splinter, so just disregard me if I go crazy there. First off, I would like to thank my buddy Jim for sending this little guy along. It's an interesting knife that I never would have gotten to handle otherwise, so there you go. Size comparison, here is your Spyderco Delica, here is yours, come on now, Shirogorov Neon. Here is your Spyderco PM2, and your Ontario Rat number 2. Again, another smaller sort of blade, although it's still actually not so small. The handle is. So, anyways, let's go on ahead and jump into the usual, the good, the bad, and the ugly of your Kizer Splinter right here. So on your good side, first off, it's a Wharncliffe blade, and I do love me some Wharncliffe blades. Although the ones I go for tend to be a little bit more silly, like this guy here. There's a nicety to having a Wharncliffe. So yeah, that's a beautiful thing. I like that. The other thing to like about this blade is that it's in S35 VN steel, which is nothing to scoff at whatsoever. I'm a big fan of S35. So there you go. This does have a milled clip, which is nice. Usually Kizer does more of a spring clip sort of affair, more along these lines here. But here they've done a milled clip with a screw in, which is cool. I got no real issue with it. And I appreciate the fact that they're doing that. So that's nice. And I hope that Kizer ends up doing more milled clips on their future models, because there have been a couple of them that really needed that sort of a thing. The Gemini comes to mind particularly. But anyways, that's nice. It does have an actual backspacer here that appears to be made of actual titanium. So that's nice. It's a cool little backspacer. The fit and finish is actually pretty decent here. You can see there are no, well, maybe you can't see, but there are no gaps between the backspacer and the knife itself. And in terms of fit and finish, everything else is actually pretty clean. I got no real complaints there. Oh, and the clip is reversible for left side carry if you'd like to. The price is $120, which isn't so bad here. It's for what you're getting with the milled clip, with a Wharncliffe blade on bearings, things like that. You know, it's not so terrible. So I like that. The good price there. And then this is a very solid flipper, in that it will always pop out 100% of the time when you press it. There's no complaint there. The action on shut is okay. It's not stellar. It's not, drop shot, but it can be coerced there. So, like I said, very solid flipper with a very strong detent. So actually, let's jump into the bad. Okay, so on the bad side, I was just saying how the detent is strong, and that's a good thing. But it's almost a little too strong, especially when you rest any part of your finger on the lock bar here. The detent ball is embedded in this lock bar, and if you have your finger on there, it increases the pressure on the blade, and thus increases the amount of force needed to pop it open. And so if you're really trying here, and if you've got your finger on the lock bar, especially in a couple of places, which is pretty easy on a knife this small, the detent becomes really hardcore. And it's annoyingly so. So I'm not a big fan of that, and I kind of do wish they'd dial the detent back a little tiny bit on this guy. That's not a huge complaint, but it is an issue, especially when there's so little place to put your hands on a knife this small. So there you go. One thing, it's a real nitpick, but the Apostle P hits on this regularly, and I'm with him. They didn't quite do the sharpening choil right, in that you can see there's a little bit of a, hopefully you can see this, there's a little bit of a lift off there. And the grind is different because the thickest part of the blade doesn't actually entirely, basically the sharpening choil doesn't cover the entire change in thickness here. So there's an area here where the grind is different because the sharpening choil didn't go out far enough. So this choil needs to be a little wider for it to really be a super functional choil. It does the trick okay, but it is something they didn't quite get right. So there you go. The ribbing is not, it does add some texture, but I'll be honest, it's smooth enough that I don't feel like it's super textury in the same way that this surface on the Griptilian is. So I don't really get it as a texturing maneuver. This isn't exactly a Vaseline factory knife, even though it's got all this ribbing, for your pleasure, of course. And then finally, the blade on this guy is 3.5 inches, if you measure from the very base here, and that's a lot of blade, honestly. For a knife this small, that's a lot of blade, and especially in a warnie where it's often nice to have the tip be relatively close to the edge of your finger so you can apply nice firm tip pressure. Not so much. So I think this is a knife that was made with a blade that's a little too long. So there you go. That's your bad. The detent is a little too strong. The sharpening choil isn't quite right. Not huge on the ribbing, and the blade is 3.5 inches, and it really shouldn't be. Let's go into your ugly. So there are 3 uglies here. First off, this surface right here. Hopefully you can see that. Where the lock bar drops away, this is actually very sharp titanium. And so when you've got this in your hand, it's very common for this surface to kind of take a grab at your finger. Not a big fan of that, and I think that's something they should have rounded off or even just eliminated entirely and just had, I don't know, I'm not a big fan of that. Second issue is that just overall the ergonomics on this guy are kind of a mess, because even for my small hands, there's just not enough knife here to grip. And it's very easy for the tail of this knife to be kind of swooping around, and with this clip in here, it's just ergonomically, I don't like it. It doesn't feel great in the hand. And more importantly, it doesn't feel secure in the hand. And if you're a guy with even bigger, or a gal for that matter, with even bigger hands, this is gonna be a problem for you. So the ergos are just a hot mess. And then finally, this knife, design-wise, is deeply busy and deeply confused. Allow me to demonstrate. You've got a blade grind that swoops up in this direction. You've got a swedge that swoops down at an entirely different angle. These two don't match together. By the way, this swedge thing is interesting because it's kind of a swedge in that it gets a little narrower, but it's not actually really a swedge because it doesn't come to a big point. And you've got a little bit of a harpoon thing going on, but it's not enough of a harpoon to be a harpoon. It's just kind of rounded off. So that doesn't make all that much sense. Then you've got this fish scale handle pattern, which, you know, maybe a fish, maybe a snake, may just be ribbing for your pleasure. Either way, it's kind of weird. Couple that with all of the various crap on the blade. You've got Splinter over here at one weird angle. You've got designed in USA by Tomcat Knives, rawr, with the little kitty on there. Okay, whatever, Kizer, and then there's a lot of busy going on there too. Then, because why not? Let's just go ahead and throw in 3 different backspacer screws on a backspacer this big. That's completely and totally excessive, almost to the lines of Quartermaster's 3 thumb studs on a knife. Not a big fan of that. That's not good. And then you've got this geometric milled clip, which is very geometric. Everything is sharp, solid lines here, where the rest of the knife is just a mess of curves. And then, even on top of all of this, you've got a wharncliffe blade, which actually isn't, because there's actually rounding to this blade. So really, it's just a blade with a very shallow belly. But it acts a lot like a wharncliffe blade, and none of these angles really make sense. You've got an angle, and so as a design piece, I have no idea what the heck is going on with this knife. It's confused. It's like Kizer was sitting there, they, put a bunch of design elements on cards and just slapping them down on the table until somebody dared the other one to stop. And that's how the Splinter was made. I just don't get it as a design. And so it's busy and it's confused. So there's your ugly. You got this nasty little bit here, which tries to eat your fingers. The ergonomics on this knife are kind of a hot mess, and the design overall is really confused and doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So let's go into your final verdict. So, conclusions. This is a deeply confusing knife. It's got a great action, which is nice. It's got a great idea. It's a small Wharncliffe sort of folder, which I like. But the thing is, it's a bit long, it's a bit ribbed, it's a little odd, poor ergos, and just confusing design. And honestly, this is just really confusing at the end of the day. It's kind of like those Google, you'll see the algorithms where like a machine learning program looked at every picture of a puppy on the internet and then generated what it thinks a puppy looks like. And it's kind of like a puppy, but it's really weird because it's got like an extra eye or something like that. In a lot of ways, I feel like this is that kind of thing for knife design. It's got a whole lot of things that look like a knife, but when you put them all together, it's just really confusing. And it's an interesting effort, but it's probably not what you want in EDC. And I think this kind of comes into Kizer. They put out a lot of knives. Some of them are really beautiful and nicely designed. Some of them are just like, oh my god, no. And some of them are just a little weird, and this is one of the weird ones. It's probably not for, it's definitely not for me, and it's honestly probably not for you either, what with the ergos and some of the other issues here. But at the same time, I gotta respect Kizer for even trying this. Shine on you, crazy Kizer. And, hopefully the next weird one they do will be a complete hit out of the park. So, there you go. The Splinter is weird, but not the good kind of weird. And yeah, I hope this has been interesting to you and that you have yourselves an absolutely wonderful rest of your day.